Good evening. I'm Mark Wilf, Chair of the Jewish Federations of North America's Board of Trustees, and I'm honored to welcome you to Jewish Disability Advocacy Month. According to Jewish tradition, each of us is created B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. The Torah actually commands us to eliminate barriers that prevent people from participating fully in Jewish life. These ideas are in our DNA, and they should be baked into our community structures. I am talking about both our concrete structures and our organizational structures. We are all imperfect, and we can all strive to do better. That's why an annual Jewish Disability Advocacy Day is so important. And this year, a Jewish Disability Advocacy Month. It's a tickler on our calendars to rededicate ourselves to this work. 1 in 4 adults in this country has a disability. That means that inclusive communities aren't just something that would be nice to have, they're essential to ensuring the future of our Jewish community. Given how few in number we are as a people, we need to make sure that we are pursuing every avenue available to engage as many Jews as possible. Inclusive communities are critical to building a just and civil society. As we also enter Black History Month, we have an opportunity to recommit ourselves to breaking down all kinds of barriers. We are working for a world of equal opportunity of participation for all, regardless of ability, skin color, or other identity or characteristic. JFNA puts B'Tselem Elokim into practice every day. This is an issue that is so close to my heart, and I'm proud that our staff includes a full-time lobbyist who advocates for JFNA's disability policy priorities. He helps engage our federations and committee members in these advocacy efforts and works with federations to help them become more inclusive and welcoming for people with disabilities. JFNA is a national leader on disability policy. Our collective efforts successfully advocated for the ABLE Act. Respite care services and special education are well funded, and caregivers have more support than ever before. We have helped block attacks on Medicaid and the Americans with Disabilities Act. We have achieved so much together, but we can do more, and it's a priority of JFNA. I hope you'll spend time with us this week as we focus on empowering people with disabilities, breaking down barriers, and creating opportunity. And please keep coming back all month long to join us in exploring Jewish disability advocacy through a federation lens. This outstanding month-long event would not have been possible without our 180 national and local partners throughout North America, who are holding over 50 of their own programs this month, and Matt Keller and Emily Grabelski, co-chairs of the Disability Committee, supported by JFNA staff members Aaron Kaufman and Darcy Hirsch. Thank you all so very much for your hard work. We are also so pleased that we're able to provide live closed captioning and American Sign Language interpretation for all of the featured JDAM programs due to a generous grant from Toyota. To turn on the captioning, please click on the CC button at the bottom of the Zoom window. Our sign language interpreter, Lucy, will be on the screen for the entire program. From beginning to end, this month highlights the capabilities of people with disabilities, focusing on what they bring to the table and how much they add to our Jewish communities. That begins tonight with special guests like Itzhak Perlman, who we'll hear from a little later, and with Rabbi Lauren Tuckman. Rabbi Tuckman is a champion of disability inclusion. She was ordained in 2018 and became the first blind woman in the world to enter the rabbinate. Through her work as a speaker, spiritual leader, and educator, she helps communities imagine how vibrant they can be when we are more inclusive. Please welcome Rabbi Lauren Tuckman. Lauren, I now turn the program over to you.
Okay, I am so sorry for the hiccup. Thank you so much. It is truly an honor and a delight to be with all of you tonight. And I want to thank the Jewish Federations of North America for your kind invitation. So we are beginning our observance of Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month this February, as we do every February in the Jewish world. And Jewish Disability Advocacy Month is an integral component of that. Our Torah teaches in this week's Parsha, or Torah portion, Yitro, that we all stood at Sinai collectively to receive Torah. We read the 10 Commandments this week. We read the experience of revelation on Mount Sinai that our people experienced. And we experienced this with all of our senses gathered all as one together. This is one of the most, if not the most, important and foundational events in our collective experience as a Jewish people, as well as in our self-understanding as a peoplehood and a nation. Our Torah also teaches that it has 70 faces, and 70 in rabbinic understanding is a stand-in for infinite, meaning that in fact, the way that we understand Torah and receive Torah is infinite. We received revelation, our tradition teaches us, collectively, but we also received it in a language that we could understand. People with disabilities and our contributions to Jewish communal life and to our society at large allow for Torah in its fullness and richness and beauty to be revealed in our communities. Though we still live in a world with many barriers for people with disabilities, with a lot of discrimination and a lot of challenge, particularly in this past year of unparalleled challenge, we also know that ours is a tradition that commands us to always make sure that we are including everyone, that we are doing what we can to break down those barriers that preclude us from creating a society in which all of us can thrive as our full and authentic selves. So as we continue with our celebration of Jewish Disability Advocacy Month tonight, and as we continue throughout the month of Jewish disability acceptance, awareness, and inclusion, may we have the intention and make the promise to ourselves and to one another that anchored in Jewish values of inclusivity and everyone being created in the image of God, as Mark so beautifully introduced to us just a moment ago, may those really buoy us forward and help us in our tireless efforts towards creating a society, a culture, and a world in which all of us can show up as our full selves and thrive in all the ways that we are able. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Tuckman. Thank you so much for offering us such meaningful words as we embark upon this journey this month. My name is Emily Grabowski, and I'm co-chair of JFNA's Disability Committee with Dr. Matt Keller. I am also the parent of a son with autism, so this is very personal to me. I am so proud that the Jewish federations around North America and our partners in Israel have made it a priority to include people with disabilities and support them as well. Diversity and inclusion are our strength in the Jewish community. False assumptions that people with disabilities are not as capable as those without disabilities can be a significant barrier to their inclusion, and it can show itself in our community and in our society. Our first segment seeks to overcome this narrative by highlighting two extraordinarily accomplished individuals who happen to have disabilities. I will also add that they are proud members of our Jewish community, and I'd love to tell you all about them. This evening's interviewer is Shayla Rosen, and she hails from Chicago, and she's a first grade teacher and a leader in the Greater Illinois chapter of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. In 2009, after being diagnosed with MS, she made it her personal mission to increase awareness, fundraise, and help others that struggle with an MS diagnosis. Shayla is currently a member of JFNA's National Young Leadership Cabinet and has served in multiple national leadership roles locally for the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago. This evening, we have the opportunity to also hear from the acclaimed Israeli-American violinist and the 15-time Grammy Award winner, Yitzhak Perlman. So exciting, I can't wait. A teacher as well, and a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Mr. Perlman has performed all over the world, including before Queen Elizabeth II at the White House. How fabulous that he's here tonight. We're so pleased to hear from him. I hope you enjoy the segment.
It is such a privilege and honor to be here in conversation with you today and for our audience to learn from you as we kick off Jewish Disability Advocacy Month. People around the world know you as a renowned violinist. What sparked your interest in playing the violin?
Well, it's an old story, and I'm sure that many people who play fiddle have similar stories. I listened to a violin when I was 3. I listened to it on the radio when I was growing up in Israel. And I just fell in love with the actual sound of the violin. And I just told my parents, that's what I want to do. So it was really very simple. And of course, you can't understand what motivates one to like a particular sound. But so sometimes when you talk to different musicians, you ask, why do you play the oboe, or why do you play the bass, or why? It's the same kind of story. You're attracted to the sound, which I feel is so important in music to begin with. So that's what happened to me.
Well, I think we're all attracted to the sound your music plays. I know when I hear it, I get goosebumps. Sometimes it makes me emotional. So we are so glad that from a young age, you knew violin was for you and that you pursued that. Many people might look at me and not know that I have multiple sclerosis. What many people may not know about you is that you contracted polio when you were very young, and since then have required support to stand and walk. How did you experience your disability as a young child growing up in Israel?
Very good question. I had a lot of friends where we were in the neighborhood that we were living. And I used to play with them, hide and seek or soccer or things like that. I was on crutches, so I was always the goalie when they played soccer because I had 4 legs, 2 and 4, so I could stop more balls. Anyway, and the thing is that kids get used to it. I mean, we're talking about when I started to have friends in that neighborhood, I was about 6 or 7 years old. And when kids get used to it. And so the only thing that they thought was very strange about me was that I practiced 3 hours a day. That they thought was the weirdest thing, because I went to school and then afterwards I would go and practice, and then after my practicing, then I would go outside and play with my friends and so on. So they get used to it. The important thing really is that you need support, and I had support from my parents. They believed in me. My music was not something that I did because I had polio and it would be nice to have something to do as a hobby. It was something that, people thought that I had some talent. So they then pushed me. What they did was there was no such thing as, you can't walk, so you don't have to practice. No such thing,
I think your story right there can probably really, it resonates for me. And I'm guessing it resonates for a lot of the viewers here today that, you know, when you get a diagnosis that you have a disability or a disease, it is life changing, but it doesn't need to be life ending. And, you know, that's what you kind of said right there. The kids around you got used to it. You were able to go to school. You were able to do these things, and it didn't affect the way you led your life. You were able to move forward, and it became a part of who you are. And I think, you know, I know for me, that's important to make it a part of who I am.
But I would like to ask you something, and you can
Sure.
tell me if you've had interesting experience. You know, because of what your particular disability, you cannot see it. Do you find
Right.
that people, do you find, and I did find, do you find that people need to see there was something wrong in order for them to figure out what's going on? Because you seem fine and no problem, and then you're not going to go and announce, by the way, I have multiple sclerosis. You're not doing that. So did you find that there are any interesting problems with the
I
lack
find
of
it
visual?
right, like some disabilities you can see them and some you can't. And I've always
Right.
said I have an invisible illness. Like you look at me right now and nobody would have any idea. I stand, I walk, I do things, but there are times where things are a struggle. And I've learned to hide it well because I want to just push through, like no matter what it is. You know, I've traveled around the world with Jewish federations in North America, and there have been days where I don't feel good, but I wanted to be part of the trip, and the schedule's really hard for someone with MS, but I push through and I leave each experience like not only feeling like I gained something from the experience, but proud of myself that I was able to do it and keep up with everybody else.
Well, I find in my situation, I find sometimes that because people can see my disability, sometimes I used to go to the airport and I was in a wheelchair. Right now, I'm in a scooter. You know, I'm not quite, I don't quite walk as I used to. But still, the fact that people look at you sitting in a chair, whether it's a wheelchair or a scooter, for some reason, they stop talking to you and they talk to the person who is with you. So if I have a companion coming with me and we go to the, let's say, to the ticket counter at an airport, the person behind the counter would say to the person with me, where is he going? And what's the time that he's traveling? It's always the case. And I always have to say, I am going so-and-so. In other words, just to prove that I can actually talk, because somehow the position of a chair immediately gives people, I don't know whether it's a discomfort or something like this. They're afraid maybe we'll do something wrong, so they don't talk to you. So I find that, so that's on the other side where you can actually see the disability. Then people begin to act a little strange.
Exactly. And that was actually one of my questions I had for you was, you know, that people with disabilities are often stigmatized. And, you know, I was going to ask, like, what are some misconceptions people might have due to your disability? And that is exactly, you know, the answer, the fact they don't ask you questions directly, right? As
Right.
if one thing has to do with the other. And, you know, that's not the case. And you know, these misconceptions are, you know, one of the reasons we're here today. Let's talk about them and let's see what we can do to, you know, raise awareness for everybody. 2020 marked the 30th anniversary of the landmark Americans with Disabilities Act, the civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. What do you hope will have changed for people with disabilities 30 years from now?
Well, I'm hoping that people will have the freedom to live without having to do something special because they happen to have a disability. I'm talking about that, for example, that every place that you go to would be accessible. So, I mean, when people talk about access, you know, there's so many things that are still not right because access is something that is only been spoken to for the last, I don't know how many years, but when you go into a shop and there's a little step, that's not accessible, you know, and people still don't think about it, You know, those little things that people are not aware of. What makes an access? What makes an access to a concert hall? Can you, you know, if you go into a hotel and you have an ADA room, you know, why is it that a large, huge hotel with so many rooms has one room that's ADA? Why one room? I mean, the thing is that when a room is accessible, it's accessible for everybody. You know, if you go into a bathroom that's accessible, everybody can use it. But if you go into a bathroom that's not accessible, people with disabilities cannot use it. So why is, you know, there are so many things that people are not aware of.
The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, for me has allowed me to keep my job. So I feel really fortunate for that, because even though, as we discussed, I have more of an invisible illness, keeping up with the work I need to do, walking around the classroom all day, I'm an educator, is not always easy. And thanks to that act, I have the support of my school, my administration. I have help for the things I need. So I am so grateful for it, but we do have a long way to go.
I agree.
So I think that's definitely, you know, something important and true. Do you feel your disability impacted your journey as a violinist?
To begin with, I had to prove that I was okay, that I was good. I had to prove that I was not good because, you know, for somebody who can't walk, is pretty good. I had to prove, and you know, and a lot of the time, you know, when you used to look at some of the early reviews that I would get, as a matter of fact, the first review that I got, the New York Times, it was, I did my debut at Carnegie Hall, and I got a standing ovation, but the reviewer said that he was not sure that the standing ovation I got was because of the way I played, or because the fact that I was sitting down when I played. And so, and that thing used to follow me for maybe, after I started playing concert, maybe 2-3 years. And then people got used to me. And so they stopped talking about it. And so now what I said was, you know, the cycle came back. So that I said, why aren't they mentioning the fact that I have a disability? Because I want to be an advocate and to prove that people with disabilities should not be put in one compartment. You should separate it, you know, separate. I always say, separate your abilities from your disabilities. One does not have to do with the other. If you are talented at something, you are talented at something, whether, you know, if you're a musician that usually stands up and plays like a violinist and you can't stand up, doesn't matter. You know, what's the important thing is, what do you have to offer as far as your music and so on. So it's an interesting problem that that I had to deal with. And then right now, every now and then, there are some comments of saying, "Oh, I had no idea that Mr. Perlman was on crutches," or "I had no idea," because they heard about me, but they haven't seen me. So the people who see me perform for the first time sometimes are surprised to see that I'm either in a scooter or walking to the stage. So now they forgot so much that they only concentrate on my music, and that's really what I want.
Exactly. I mean, your music, you are so talented, and it's a challenge, right? What happened with the New York Times, right? It should have been about your music. And I can see how reading something like that would be disheartening to see, you know, like, yes, you have a disability, but that is not why you are playing this beautiful music for the world. And we should be focusing at a time like that on your accomplishments. Another thing I wanted to mention, I am involved with Jewish Federation, as I mentioned about the Israel trip, and I'm a member of Jewish Federations in North America's National Young Leadership Cabinet. And for me, getting involved helped me view my identity through a new lens. And devoting my time to the Jewish community has helped me wake up each day with a positive outlook, despite the challenges I have faced. So instead of letting my MS stop me, I have let it drive me to make a difference. Our work at Jewish Federations is guided by the values of the Torah, that we are to see the inherent divinity in each other. We see those with critical needs and we let them know we are here to support them. What impact has Judaism and the Jewish community had on your life?
Well, I know who I am. I was born in Israel. My household was traditional. My mother and my father both came from Poland, and we had a kosher home, and we celebrated. You know, Shabbos was Shabbos, and holidays. Even though we couldn't really afford to go to a fancy synagogue, we went to a local service on Rosh Hashanah, and you know, and then on the other holidays, and you know, Passover was. You know, matzahs and stuff. So it was all traditional. Right now, we've been, you know, I just celebrated our 54th wedding anniversary with my wife, and you know,
Mazel tov.
thank you very much. And our house is kosher, and we are, you know, Friday night is Friday night, so we light the candles, we make the kiddush, and we do it. We've been doing it for years for all the members of our family. And the thing is that it never occurred to me that as to what, you know, there was never a question as to my identity as a Jew. I was involved a lot with going to countries where they did not have a good relationship with Israel. And I always felt that music was always the barometer of when the relationships became warmer. So one of the things a long time ago is going to the Soviet Union, and went to the Soviet Union when they started to have, when relations started to warm up, and immediately they invited the Israel Philharmonic, and I went on tour with them. And it was one of the most emotional experiences to go and represent my country and Judaism you know, in Russia. And one of the moving experience was to listen to the orchestra play Hatikva in Moscow, and not to have the audience sing it because they didn't really know that was not their anthem. I would always be used to listening to Hatikva and everybody sings because it was played, you know, either at Jewish affairs or in Israel and so on, but this one wasn't. And so it was so moving to me that we are doing our anthem in this country, and of course, music is always an international language. So there's no such thing. I don't think, you know, you can say Perlman is the Israeli violinist because I am Israeli, but I'm a musician, and the language of music is truly international.
The theme of our program this month is empowerment to action. What steps can we as advocates take to empower and support people with disabilities?
Awareness, a lot of awareness we need. We need awareness as to what's going on, absolutely. Sometimes, you know, for me, it's very funny, you know, sometimes I see somebody who had a problem with, you know, they broke their leg or something like this, and they have to use crutches for a while. And then they say, now I know what you're going through. All of a sudden, you know, I see, oh, there's steps here, there's steps there, there's a little step there. How do you do that? You know, and they only find that out when they have a personal experience.
We have run out of time here, so I just want to thank you again for being here today. It was an honor, and thank you for sharing so openly your story of, you know, becoming a famous violinist, how having polio, it's not easy to get up and really openly share your personal journeys. So we appreciate you taking the time and being part of this important work that we are doing.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Anytime.
That interview was so inspiring to me. I hope that everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. Can everyone see me? I'm not sure. Yes? Okay. It's amazing what individuals can accomplish with the right support. I hope we can all work together to create a new narrative that focuses on the talents of people with disabilities. We need to find ways to lift them up so that they can flourish and make contributions to our larger society. This speaks to Tikkun Olam, making the world a better place. And it's something that I'm very hopeful about because of my son, Sam, who has autism. This leads us to our next segment. It features a young man named Harris, who is on the autism spectrum, and he's also an accomplished musician. Harris has developed the skills to graduate college, Mazal Tov. He also lives independently because of the support he's received from the Jewish Federation of Metro West and its partner agencies, JFS Metro West, Jesby House, which promotes independent living, and the JCC of Metro West. We always say it takes a village, and it's something we're very proud of. A special thanks tonight to Oheb Shalom congregation in South Orange, New Jersey, for allowing us to film Harris in their beautiful synagogue. You'll notice that Harris and his mom are wearing masks, as we wanted to make sure to take the proper health and safety precautions during this time. Let's watch this video and learn more about Harris. I hope you enjoy it as much as I will.
One, two, three, four. Rafa'inu Adonai b'nei Rafa'e. My name is Harris Ringel. I am 28 years old, and I am a jazz synagogue pianist based in South Orange, New Jersey. I have a disability that is known as autism, but I don't let that stop me from doing what I love to do. I started getting involved in music when I was about 5 years old. I love the music to make people happy when they're in a bad mood sometimes, or a good mood. It just brightens their whole day, and to see people lighten up because of my music, it brightens my day as well. Healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind to spirit.
Harris started participating at Jesby Day services when he was 18 and he was still in high school. We utilized that as a transition program from his transition from school to adult life. So the role of the Federation and its partner agencies have really been to help Harris be connected through their robust programming and prevent what could be terrible isolation for somebody with a disability.
The Federation, I think, has set a good example of helping people accomplish their dreams. Sometimes certain people can feel like their dreams are impossible, but with some encouragement from companies like the Federation, they realize that their dreams aren't as far outreach as they think that it is. Anyone, any age, any ability can do whatever they want to do and once they put their mind to something, don't give up. Heal us now.
Wow, that was really moving. My name is Matthew Keller, and I'm honored to serve as co-chair of JFNA's Disability Committee. I'm incredibly proud that the work that we do can support people like Harris in such meaningful ways every single day. We're now going to meet some leaders in Congress who are making a real impact in the realm of disability policy. First, we are so honored to be able to have House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer with us this evening. Leader Hoyer led the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act over 30 years ago. Leader Hoyer, thank you so much for your leadership and support of the disability community and for taking the time to be with us tonight, even with all the pressing important business on Capitol Hill.
Well, thank you so much. I am so pleased to be with all of you. Do you have my video? Let's just make sure we have everything okay. I don't know whether Representative Raskin has already spoken, but if not, you're in for a great treat. He's, as you know, leading the managers for the impeachment and will be arguing next week on behalf of the impeachment and pointing out why he believes that conviction is necessary and important. Jamie Raskin is a wonderful asset to our Congress and to this Maryland. Representative Schreier and Representative Katko, I understand, will also be speaking, and you're going to very much enjoy both of them as well. I am so pleased, as I said, to join you and talk a little bit about disabilities and the efforts that we're making and that you're making. So I thank you for welcoming me to this Jewish Disability Advocacy Month. I was honored to join you in 2019 in person on Capitol Hill. This is such a wonderful event that brings together those who are living with disabilities and their most steadfast advocates. And that feeling of unity and determination is just as palpable through the video conferencing as it is in person. As I say, we may not be in the same room, but we're in the same box together. As this year's theme says, this is our time, our fight. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted many of the challenges we face as a nation in terms of inequality, of access, and of opportunity. As advocates and policymakers work together to advance recovery policies, we need to make sure that we are staying focused on promoting greater equality of access to programs and services that help families and communities build back better. Thankfully, we have a strong ally in the Biden-Harris administration. And now is exactly the time for the disability advocacy community to carry forward the fight for full inclusion, access, and equality. When I sponsored the Americans with Disabilities Act over 30 years ago, millions of Americans were shut out of the daily life and prevented from participating fully in our economy. That cost them, of course, but it also cost all of us and our community and our economy. Together, and I know so many of you were involved in this effort, together we were able to secure the enactment of the bipartisan legislation, which has made such a profound difference in the lives of so many. Those of us serving in Congress like to believe that every piece of legislation we write and pass is a small piece of repairing the world. But the Americans with Disabilities Act was truly a grand instrument of Tikkun Olam. Not only did it open doors, but it opened minds. It changed the way most Americans looked at their neighbors whose physical abilities differed from their own. But you know, almost every one of us has some disability. I tell people all the time that the Americans with Disabilities Act was misnamed. What we should have named it was Americans with Abilities, and drop the diss. Don't diss people, because all of us can do something, and all of us have things that we can't do. The Americans with Disabilities Act gave many people a greater understanding and appreciation for the daily challenges that too many take for granted. Now, 30 years later, an entire generation of Americans has grown up without much thought to the curb cuts they see or the braille they encounter on signs and in elevators, or the scrolling of the words across the screen. There are young people today who do not remember a time when crosswalks didn't feature audible guides or when building entrances were constructed without ramps. Now, I want you to think about something. Crosswalks were obviously for people in wheelchairs so that they get up to the curb. But you know, millions of people use those who are pushing baby carriages, millions more who are using bicycles. So the improvement for those with disabilities enhanced the lives of those who didn't have those particular disabilities. That's the measure of our success. But it's also a call to action, to teach this new generation about how hard so many advocates worked to achieve those things and to engage them in the work of taking the next steps in the fight for inclusion and equality. You know, what we talked about were reasonable accommodations that didn't cost that much. In new building, for instance, we required elevators. Now, if you include that at the beginning of the building, it's not that expensive. We didn't require that you backfilled in effect, but we did want to make the future better for those with disabilities. That includes improving and expanding work opportunities for people with disabilities and enacting policies that help people with disabilities who want to live independently in their communities. Now, so many of the access provisions of the bill have made a great difference. One of the places, though, that we need a lot of work on is employing those with disabilities to make sure that they have a chance at self-support and independent living. A great rabbi from the days of the Talmud once said, "It's not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting the world." But he added, "You are not free to desist from it." In other words, we may not be able to make the world perfect, but it is our responsibility to try to do so on a daily basis, on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis throughout our lives. We will not complete this work in our lifetimes, but we must continue to see it through and pass it on to the next generation. I want to thank the Jewish Federation of North America for taking that mission to heart and making it a priority by engaging more and more people in the work of advocating for the rights of those with disabilities. You know, I was the sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities and worked with so many people, including Ted Kennedy, Senator Harkin, Senator Dole, a number of Republicans on the House side. We worked together and we made it happen. But we all knew that those words on paper were good words with good objectives and good intent. But we knew that they were simply words on paper. And it would take advocates like are on this Zoom call or in the Federation who are active in this effort. It takes all of you to make the bill real, to make it live, to make it have a difference in the lives of millions and millions of people. And I want to say something as well, that I'm very proud of the fact that the Americans with Disabilities Act, signed by George Bush, a Republican president, George H.W. Bush, on July 26, 1990, in concert with Ted Kennedy, Tom Harkin, myself, and other Democrats and Republicans. It was a bipartisan bill, and it has been a template around the world. So many countries have adopted legislation similar to the Americans with Disabilities Act, which have made a difference in the millions of lives of people around the world. It was a good effort. It was a good start. But we need to every day ensure that the promise of the Americans with Disabilities Act becomes the reality in the lives of millions of our fellow citizens who have a challenge. And we all have challenge, but they have specific challenges that they can overcome with our help. John Kennedy said, "Let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own." You do God's work. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much, Leader Hoyer, for all the work you have done for people with disabilities, for the Jewish community, for all of us. We will now share a few moments with Representative Jamie Raskin, whose Jewish values loom large in his battles for disability rights and support for those most in need, even during times of personal crisis. Last month, Representative Raskin lost his only son to mental illness, and shortly afterward endured the events of Capitol Hill on January 6th. He wanted to be with us in person, as he so often has in the past, but due to his busy schedule, is not able to join us. I can't think of a better testament to the centrality of our issue than the fact that he still insisted on sending us this message from the heart. Following Representative Raskin's words, we will then hear from another congressional leader who is changing the way we think about disabilities, Representative Kim Schreier from Washington State. She will be in conversation with JFNA's Senior Vice President of Public Affairs, Alana Breitman. We will now hear from Representative Raskin.
Hello, everybody who's joined together for the Advocacy Month and the meeting. Stacy Burdett and Aaron Kaufman, thank you for inviting me. What an all-star amazing lineup you've got. Hello to Mark Wilf, who's the chair of the Jewish Federations of North America, and Rabbi Tuchman and Itzhak Perlman and Shayla Rosen and Harris Engel, my colleagues from the House who've joined you. I'm just thrilled to be able to send you greetings as you intensify and redouble the fight for equal rights and inclusion for everybody. And that's what this is about, because we know that there are tens of millions of people who have different kinds of disabilities, whether they're physical or mental disabilities or other kinds. And we want a society that is open for everybody and that is promoting everybody's success and everybody's achievement and everybody's best health. And so I just want to thank you all for being on the front lines of this struggle, especially through the difficulties of the global pandemic and COVID-19, which has been a nightmare for our people and especially difficult for people who are dealing with disabilities. So your work is more critical than ever. And I know that there is going to be lobbying around telehealth and making sure that that's part of the health solution. And I know also people are going to be working on the ABLE Adjustment Act. And of course, I am totally with you there as well. So I want you to consider me a close partner. My door is always open to you. And I'm very proud to be part of this movement to strengthen our democracy by making sure that everybody is part of it. Everybody is honored, and we are maximizing everybody's talents and gifts. So sending you all my love and my solidarity for this meeting and for this Jewish Disability Advocacy Month.
Thank you, Representative Raskin, for sharing that message with us as we kick off our month of advocacy in support of the disability community. My name is Darcy Hirsch. I am JFNA's Director of Government Affairs. Alana Breitman is having some technical challenges, so it is my pleasure to begin the conversation with Representative Kim Schreier. Hi, so nice to see you.
Hi, Darcy. Well, it's great to see you, and it's wonderful to be with you again. And what a pleasure it is always for me to hear from my friends and colleagues, Jamie Raskin, Steny Hoyer. I'll tell you, I think Steny, after quoting the Talmud and referring to Tikkun Olam, I think he gets to be an honorary member of the tribe.
I agree. I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I have to say it's an honor to have you with us this evening. And I know we're here tonight to talk about disability policy, but we want to thank you for your steadfast support of all of JFNA and the Jewish community's policy priorities, including support for Holocaust survivors. So thank you so much for that. Well, let us begin with some comments about how you came to this work and how you came to focus on your work as a pediatrician and disability policy.
Well, let me turn off my phone first here. Oh. The timing is horrible. There we go. How I came to this, you know, I think when we all run for Congress, when we run for Congress and we take on this job, we don't take on this job to help people who don't need help. You know, I came to Congress as a pediatrician because I wanted everybody to have health care that they could afford. I wanted people to be able to afford their prescription drugs. And I wanted to come on behalf of my patients, many of whom have disabilities of one sort or another. I mean, we all have varying levels and abilities. But the reason I am here is to go to bat for people who need a little hand up. So whether that is a mom trying to get by with 2 kids and 1 job in a time of COVID, or whether that is somebody who needs accessibility help, or a child who needs special education in school, that all makes sense and it all fits in the same paradigm. So I'm just delighted to be with you. And I think that supporting advocacy work for people with disabilities, it just makes sense to somebody who is a mother and a pediatrician and a member of Congress, and frankly, who's a Jewish person and sees the humanity in everyone, wants everyone to do well, understands the concept of Tikkun Olam, and you know, really tries to live by love your neighbor as yourself.
Great. Well, we're lucky you ran for Congress and that we have such an incredible advocate with you on our behalf. So I know that you're very busy, and I know that we, those of us who are working on the Hill are paying very close attention to what's happening with the next stimulus bill, as is our audience. And we're aware that there are negotiations for the next stimulus package. As we look at our policy agenda for Disability Advocacy Month, we're focusing on items that can help support healthcare for those who need it, and supportive services for people with disabilities, nutrition for those in need. And we know that 1 in 4 people who are beneficiaries of SNAP benefits, formerly known as food stamps, actually have a disability. So in the next stimulus package, we're pushing for those items to be included. What is your perspective on how we can get that done in a bipartisan way?
Well, I am pushing for those very same things. In fact, I am in my last term, my first term in Congress, I sat on both the Education Committee and the Agriculture Committee, which gave me a lot of jurisdiction over the issue of hunger and food, SNAP benefits, helping kids and families. And so, and also about IDEA, to make sure that, you know, IDEA is not just a good idea, that we actually fully fund it so that every child really can get an education that will match and be compatible with abilities. So I am right there with you, pushing for the same things. I think that theoretically, in a bipartisan fashion, we all want people to have the nutrition they need. Sometimes this comes down to degrees and quantities, and I am on the more generous side of the quantities, because people who are well nourished do better. Students do better, workers do better, and this is a time of really unprecedented need in our country. I have spent time during this pandemic at food banks, seeing people who have never needed help before need help now. And so any way we can lend a hand, we are there to do it.
Wonderful. And I know that our Jewish Federation supported agencies are really on the front lines of helping those who are most in need.
Thank you.
Like food pantries, taking advantage of the emergency funding that has been allocated in the past several stimulus packages. So thank you so much for your advocacy for pushing forward what we have already received, and we look forward to working with you on more, because the situation is quite dire. We will be sending an action alert to all of the folks who have signed up to this program, urging them to reach out to their members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to push for these items in the next stimulus package. I have one more.
And also know that I'm on your side. We want increased FMAP to help people who are getting Medicaid services. We want coverage for COVID testing and treatment. We want an understanding that people are losing jobs and need even more of a hand than usual. So the more you call my office, frankly, the more muscle it gives me when I go to negotiate with my peers. So please do.
That's a great message for our audience. So just a reminder to everyone, when we send out the action alert, please complete it. Your members need to hear from you on these items. So Dr. Schreier, I have one more question before we wrap up. We know that isolation has increased during the pandemic, but for older adults, people with disabilities, due to social distancing measures. What can Congress do to help those who may be experiencing mental health issues?
This has been a really hard time, not just for the disability community, for everybody. The social isolation really takes a toll, I think in particular for young children and for the elderly, whose development and kind of the sustaining of an active, engaged mind really depends on those social interactions more than ever. I as a physician in Congress, really went to bat to have the healthcare at home abilities all through the COVID pandemic, so that you could see your doctor, your mental health care provider by video this way, but even by phone, because not everybody has a video capability. So to be able to contact your providers from the safety of your home was one thing. The other is that in a broader sense, we need to rethink some of how we take care of people. I mean, there's no reason that telemedicine and the ability to have a doctor's appointment virtually should go away after the pandemic. I feel like that was a game changer, and we've all realized how much that fits into our lives. Kind of like what Steny was talking about, that if you make a change in the sidewalks so that a wheelchair can go across a crosswalk, well, a bike can too, and a skateboard can too, and a stroller can too. And I think that this is one of those moments where you make healthcare accessible by phone or video for COVID, but you find that there are myriad reasons to continue to do that, to make people's lives easier. And I think certainly for the disability community, to be able to have that visit without schlepping to a doctor's office, for some people, is really a life changer. I'd love to just comment for a moment that as I was thinking about, maybe what to talk about today, I think a lot of us who have never really walked in the shoes of a person with disabilities are experiencing just a little tiny version of that right now during the pandemic. Like, we're understanding accessibility issues and having to do telecommunications, meet by video, and what happens if something goes wrong. We're experiencing having things delivered to us because we're unable to go out and get them. And I hope that this brings even more humanity and empathy and understanding. And I hope we all remember this experience going forward about what it feels like to be isolated and how much more we can help.
Absolutely. There has been a silver lining, and that harkens back to Zach Perlman's words before you joined about awareness and walking in someone else's shoes. So thank you so much for being with us tonight and for your message and for your advocacy. And I know that our folks in Washington State will look forward to being in touch with your office, as will we. So thank you so much, Dr. Schreier, for joining us. Our time has come to a close. I would like to thank all of our participants this evening for joining us for our Jewish Disability Advocacy Month kickoff event. Please check our website at jewishtogether.org/JDAM for the schedule of the remaining events for the month. We have a session tomorrow at noon with the JCC Association and a networking session at 4 o'clock with Respectability. So please join us for those and look for our action alert next Monday morning in your email inboxes. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you for your advocacy.